Hello everyone, welcome back to another video. For today's video, I'm going to be doing a beginner-friendly tutorial. For those who are new to Procreate or want to give it a try, I'm basically just going to be going through all the basics of this program. Now, I've been using this program for the last 6 years, I'd say, since 2018. And throughout all the updates, I've seen how the software has changed. And, it's given me a lot of time to play around with it.
Flashback.
And basically become what I like to call a pro. So now with 6 years of experience using this software, I think I'm at the point where I can now teach you guys how to use it. One thing I just want to point out is throughout this tutorial, you're probably going to see this mouse cursor here. And by no means is this a software for computer. It's strictly for iPad users. But since I'm streaming on OBS, I'm just using my cursor to point out things to explain better. Okay, so first off, we want to focus on what we have at the top right here. You're going to see select, import photo, and then this plus sign. With select, you would just use this if you wanted to select multiple different artworks and organize them, and I'll walk through with that at the end, but let's skip over that one. Then we have import. This would be if you wanted to import existing files that you already have. And photo, obviously if you want to just jump in with a photo that you have in your camera roll and maybe, I don't know, draw on top of that. And then we have this plus sign here, so this is what we're going to use to create our canvas. So just go ahead and click that. So what you'll see is already presetted canvases made. It's not going to be this much. You have the option to either choose one of these or create your own. Now, I don't want to already start off on a bad note and confuse you guys, but just figured I'd show you. Here's where you can set your canvas size. Right now it's in pixels, that's why you see px. And then below you can change it to any unit you want. Maybe let's say you were doing prints, right? And you wanted it to be inches. You wanted it to be 8.5 by 11 inches. You would click inches and then set your size. For now, we're not going to worry about creating our own. So let's click cancel. For me, I'm just going to go with the paper size. So tap that and it should open up. This is our interface to where we're going to draw our artwork. So first, let me introduce the top right. So we have our brushes here. And here you'll get this whole big library with a bunch of different types of brushes that Procreate gives you. For me, it's going to be a lot more brushes here because I've created my own and imported some from other creators, which I do got a video on how to do that, which you can watch afterwards, and I'll link somewhere on the screen. Right now, I'm just in airbrushing, the airbrushing pack, and I just have the hard brush selected. Next, we have our Smudge Tool, which is going to give you the same brush library, but instead you're using it for the Smudge Tool, so you can select anything. And then same for the eraser tool, same brush library, but instead you're using it as an eraser. Next, we have our layers, but we're going to skip over that real quick and I'll come back. That circle on the right corner is going to be where our color wheel is. You'll automatically probably have something like this, which is your wheel. But at the bottom, you'll see here that we have disc, classic, harmony, value, and palettes. I often like to go with classic just because it's the square and I prefer to alter with these little bars here to change my colors. And then you have your history, which is going to show just your previous colors that you've used. And then right there where it says untitled, it might not say that for you. It might have an automatic palette selected. That's just where you can create your own color palettes. So let's say I wanted to save some colors as a palette. I would go maybe with this pink, and I'm going to just tap in an empty square and it automatically sets that palette. And then maybe a red and tap there. And you can access these palettes by going and clicking palettes here. And you'll see some I've already created, which are just messy. And then some are going to be presetted from Procreate, but we have that one I just made at the top. And it's checked, meaning that it's going to be in our palette area here. If you want to change it, you would just go ahead and click these three dots on a different palette and set as default. And then we go back and you'll see that's at the bottom there. Now at the left side of the screen where you see these bars, this is to adjust your size of your brush. And then this one at the bottom is to adjust the opacity of your brush. So if we add something like this, you see that the brush is a lot lighter versus the opacity being at 100. we get the full black brush. Sidebar, if you've noticed that while you're drawing, you're not getting this, different pressure sensitivity, it's probably because you bought a cheap stylus. Sad part is with Apple, you have to buy the Apple Pencil. So I would suggest getting that if you want to be able to, do pressure sensitivity. Like the harder I'm pressing, the darker it is, the lighter I'm pressing, the more transparent it is. So I would definitely suggest doing that. Now to undo, we're just gonna click these arrows at the bottom left just to undo, and your redo button is there as well. Or a faster way to do that is tapping 2 fingers to undo and 3 fingers to redo. And then this little square here is just going to be your color picker, which you can use to select different colors. So let's say you have this painting with all these different colors, right? And then you want to get your specific color. You're like, oh my gosh, I don't want to have to go back on the color wheel and figure out what color is, or maybe you didn't save it in your palette. What you would do is you would click this box right there, and this should pop up where you can now select your exact color. So maybe if I wanted to get this color here, now you see it's on your circle and you have that selected. Okay, and now that I covered how we use our tools, I'm gonna go up here to show you guys how the layers work. So just go ahead and tap those 2 squares. Basically, you're always going to have this, your layer 1 and your background color. If you tap your background color, you get your color wheel again, and you can change it. I'm just gonna go with like a gray, and then click done. And then layer 1, if you tap layer 1, you get these options, which are rename, select, copy, fill layer, etc. Right now, we're just gonna focus on renaming it. So rename that layer, and let's name it sketch. It's just best to stay organized to understand what's going on. Okay. And now make sure we have our black color selected. Let me draw a smiley face. And see how I did a circle and it's not really, the best. A little trick if you want to do a perfect circle is we're going to draw it as best as you can. We're not going to let go, so hold. It automatically makes a circle, and in and out you can adjust the size, but it's obviously right now it's just an oval. So if I wanted to make it a perfect circle, I'm going to tap 2 fingers and hold, and now you see it's perfect, and just let go, and you have your circle there. And that's same for any shape really. So if I wanted to do a square, a perfect square, I'm gonna hold, tap with 2 fingers, our perfect square. Triangle, hold, tap with 2 fingers, perfect triangle. Okay, but yeah, we're just gonna do our circle. Let's hold that. Perfect. Adjust my brush size. Okay, and once we have our sketch done, we're gonna actually need to create some more layers. But before we do that, I'm just gonna explain what layers actually are. So for instance, let's take this drawing we have of Kirby here. Some might look at this and say, oh, it's just a 2D flat drawing of Kirby. It's probably 1 layer, but it would actually be at least 2 or 3, maybe even sometimes more. But for this, we're going to divide it between 3 layers, being our sketch, our color layer, and then on top, the line work. So basically, you could look at it as layers are just pieces that are stacked up on top of each other to create our drawing. Now going back to our layers, this check mark here is to turn it on and off to hide your layer. And then if you click the N right there, this is where you get all these different options. So at the top here, we can adjust our opacity. And then here we have a bunch of different layer modes, which I will explain a bit later, but we're just gonna leave it as normal. And then I would just click the plus here to create a new layer. Let's tap layer and rename this as cleanup. And then I would do my cleanup. Now we have our cleaned up version. We're going to click the check mark for sketch to turn it off. And now we have cleaned up one. Now there's 2 ways that you can color this. You can either just color this all on 1 layer, which we would just go ahead And let's say I wanted to make it yellow. I would go in here and try and be precise, but you see it's going over our lines, which we don't want. So just undo that. Or I could drag and drop to color these in. But we're gonna be more organized. So we're gonna create a new layer. And on this new layer, we're gonna tap it and rename it and call it face. Now we're gonna move it. To move it, you're gonna hold and drag to where you want it to be. And we have it there. Now we could go ahead and change our color, maybe to like a yellow or something. And then you can go ahead and paint it in like this. But you might find yourself, getting out of the lines, and then you would have to clean it up with the eraser tool. But there's actually a faster way to fill this using the select tool. And I'm gonna show you how to do that. So let's undo this, go back to our layers, and on your cleanup, you're going to tap the layer and select reference. Now, what reference is going to do is no matter what layer you're on, when you're using your select tool, it's going to reference the lines on this layer here. So I'm going to show you what I mean by that. So make sure you're on the face layer. We're going to go up to the top left where we have our select tool here, and you'll get these different options. We get automatic, freehand, rectangle, ellipse. Let's skip over automatic for a second just so I can show you what these ones are. So freehand is basically, we have our freehand where you can go and just tap that dot to solidify it. You can do more shapes, and then you would click color fill here and it fills what you just drew freehand with the select tool. Or you can use rectangle, which pretty self-explanatory, gives you the rectangle, or even ellipse, which you can use an ellipse by dragging to what shape you want. And you can change these colors by just going ahead to your wheel and moving it around like so. But we're going to undo that. So tap your select tool at the top left and just tap with 2 fingers to undo. And now going back to the select tool, we're going to select automatic. And now what this does is it's going to reference the lines from the cleanup layer. You're just going to automatically select the spaces like so. And you tap and drag to adjust the threshold. You see at the top there it says selection threshold. So we can tap these areas, and then we can click color fill at the bottom and it'll fill your smiley face there. If it's not doing that, it's because you need to turn on the color fill button here at the bottom. See, you might have something blue, so just tap color fill. And we're just gonna leave the face colored for now, okay? So there, maybe go with something lighter. Now we have our face colored, okay? And then we're gonna do the same thing, but just creating more layers. So tap the plus. This one is gonna be your eyes. Select tool again, automatic, tap where the eyes are, and get your different color. I'm gonna do maybe this, green or something. And then same thing for the mouth, new layer, rename that as mouth. Okay. Select tool, automatic, mouth area, and get your color. So that's basically how you quickly color using the select tool. Next thing here, I'm going to show you guys how we would use layer modes. So let's say you're doing a portrait. This is our beautiful, amazing portrait here. And we want to add some highlights to our character, okay? So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to create a new layer. And we're going to drag this layer to be on top of the face, but under the eyes. And this one, I'm going to name it Face Highlights. Okay. And then I'm going to click N, the N there. And you can really experiment with all these different layer modes, but I'm just going to show you the few main ones that I use. So drag down and we're going to go to add. Now when you paint, you see that it's creating like a glowing effect, right? But you want it to not go on the outsides of your portrait. Your beautiful smiling face. So let's undo that. We're going to go to our layers, and on face highlights, we're going to tap the layer and then click clipping mask. Now you should see an arrow that points to the layer under it. And what this does is anything on this layer we set the clipping mask on is going to mask to the layer below. So now when we paint, you see that it's only staying on here. So I'm actually going to get my brush and change it to the soft airbrush. We're gonna make our size bigger, and I'm just gonna give it a glow. You know, maybe just go all the way around, just lightly. Something like this. Maybe in the center, let's pretend that was the nose, right? And you can obviously change your color. I just kind of left it at this, what I had. It doesn't matter, but it acts differently depending what colors you have. So if you change it to this green, you get maybe something brighter. Now, I'm gonna do the same for the eyes. Create that new layer. Let's name this eye highlights. Okay, tap the layer, clipping mask, and then make sure the layer mode is set, of course, to add. Okay, now let's say for the face you wanted to do some shadows. So in the mouth we would probably have some shadows, you know, because it's inside. So we're gonna go and create a new layer, top of the mouth, same thing, name this mouth shadow, tap the layer, clipping mask, and now instead in your layer modes you're gonna go up to multiply. Now this is just going to make it darker, so I guess it just multiplies the darkness of the color under it. So I'm gonna go to like maybe darker purple or something, and then you'll see that we get this multiplied face, like so. Okay, simple. You can even do the same for your face, because like I guess if your character has a nose, you would want to do the same. So you can go to your face layer and then click plus, and it'll automatically clip it because it's in between your face highlight and the face. So it's gonna clip it. Name our layer, of course. And then you can mess around with these all you want. You can even use the other layer modes, but just for beginner's sake, I'm just gonna show you those two, because those are the most important ones that I use really. Now, and then also I wanted to show you guys the smudge tool real quick. So let's just go ahead and create a new layer. Let's not worry too much about what it's labeled as right now. We're going to get maybe just our hard brush, and let's get two colors. So let's get blue, you just paint it here like so, and then let's get red, that, and then we're going to use our smudge tool to mix these together. So tap in the smudge tool there, and like I said, if you tap onto it, you'll get this whole brush library where you'll get different things. I'm just gonna go to the same thing, which is the hard brush tool, and then if you go ahead and use it, you can blend your colors together. But as you've seen when we did this, I didn't do any of that. I just used the soft airbrush to go ahead and add that in. But this is also an option which I do recommend using the smudge tool when painting. It's a good idea because you get this variant of colors where now we don't just have blue and red, we also have that purple mixed in. And since that's just BS up there, I want to get rid of that layer. I'm gonna go to it, swipe right, and then you get these options to either lock your layer, duplicate, delete. Locking the layer means that if you touch it, you won't be able to affect it again. So let's lock it. Now you get that option there. And you see I can't do anything. I try to do something, it says lock layer selection. I can click unlock here, which I'm gonna do, unlock. Now I can adjust it again. We can duplicate it, which just creates 2 versions. Or what we wanna do is get rid of it. So we're gonna swipe right and delete these 2. Okay, now next, let's say we wanna move this around our canvas, right? We can go ahead and clicking our cleanup layer, I'm gonna go to the top left where you see that arrow, and you'll get something like this, where you have freeform, uniform, distort, and warp. And of course, some more options at the bottom where you get snapping, flipping horizontally, flipping vertically, etc., right? But if I move this, you see it's only moving our line work, which is not what we want. Like, we want to move the whole thing, right? So to do that, we're gonna go back to our layers and we're gonna group this all together as one. So to select multiple layers, you're gonna go ahead and swipe right on each layer and it will highlight in blue. And just don't worry about the sketch layer. Maybe we'll just leave that one by itself. And then you're going to click group at the top right. And now you'll see it says new group. If you click that arrow, it'll squish it all into one piece. And if you want to open it back up, just click that arrow again. But let's just name it for now. So tap it, rename, portrait. And if you've seen, when you tap it, you can do more things. Like you can flatten, merge down. If you were to flatten it, I'll show you. So if I click flatten, now it's not multiple layers now. Now, as you see, it's just one thing. I mean, if you want to do that, you can, but now it kind of, you can't go back and change things. Like you could, but it would just be complicated to do. So I'm going to undo that. So now to move this around, we're going to go ahead and at the top left, click that arrow. It takes you back to this, where now we can move it all around as one. It's nice and easy. And if you wanted to change the size, you would anchor from these corners. So, you know, change the size. If you wanted to rotate it, click the green one here to rotate. And make sure you're on uniform, because if you're not on uniform, it's not going to perfectly scale. So seeing the difference here, if I click freeform and then try to do that same thing, it's stretching it, which, you know, you might want, you might not want. I mean, you could stretch it if you wanted to, but I'm going to just leave it for now. Same goes for distort. This distorts it. You can get like a more perspective type look, like make it look like it's in perspective. I don't know. It's really just what you want to go for, right? Warp. This is more, I do this more for like typography. So if you wrote something out and you want to look like it's warping around like a circle or something, you would use that. So and then we have snapping at the bottom. And what snapping does is it gives you an anchoring point when you're moving things. So for example, if I wanted to move this character to the right, but I want it to be perfectly to the right, rather than me trying to do it myself, I would go ahead and click snapping, go to magnetics, and now you'll see you get this blue line that perfectly moves things for you. So if I wanted to go even up and down, or, you know, left and right, or you can select magnetics and snapping. And now what the yellow line shows you is the center of your canvas. So if you wanted this to be perfectly centered, you would turn that on and then just use that as a tool. But for now, I'm going to uncheck those. And we have flip horizontally, flip vertically, rotate 45 degrees, fit canvas, which is already fit to canvas, but let's imagine it wasn't. Making it smaller, and then clicking fit to canvas will bring it back up. And then bicubic, I wouldn't worry about right now. Reset is just if you changed it and you wanted to reset it to what you had, you can click that. Okay, now to cover these 2 buttons at the top, we have our adjustments, aka that magic wand. And here you get all these different things. You get hue, saturation, brightness, blah, 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 blah. We're gonna get into that, okay? So first, go to your layers. We're going to duplicate this group, okay? We're gonna tap it and we're gonna flatten it. So now what we have, let's just turn that first one off. Now we just have this as one single layer. Okay, I'll explain why we did that. Going to our adjustments up here, click hue, saturation, and brightness. And now using these different bars, you can change and play around, you know, and get all these different colors. If you wanted to just affect one thing at once, like one whole layer, you would do it like this. The saturation, it makes it more saturated. We will change it to like this, okay? And brightness looks kind of evil now. That's that. I'm just gonna undo it, go back up there. We get color balance, that's another option where you get to change things. Here you get these 3 different bars. And if you click this button on the right, you can adjust the shadows, the midtones, and the highlights. So say I wanted to adjust the shadows of this, you see it's affecting the darkest colors. And then even the highlights, it's gonna affect the lightest colors. And then same with the midtones. Okay, got that. I'm going to undo it. Okay, and for the next adjustment, curves, I brought up a different artwork here just to get a different vibe with how I actually use it, because this is one that I actually use more than color balance and hue, saturation, brightness. So if you tap curves, when you open it, you'll get this graph, and these 2 blue dots that you see in the bottom left and top right corner create this white line. So if you were to go ahead and move the dot, you see that it can adjust the lightness, the darkness of it. But you can do much more than this, whereas rather than it just being a line, you can create slopes. So I can create a new blue dot by either tapping an empty space or tapping on the line. So like that. And then maybe we could tap the empty space too. And you see that it alters it. And that's just us being under gamma. You can also delete these points by just tapping it, and you should get delete. And then also, same thing, just for you'll be affecting the reds, the greens, and the blues. So let's go to red, and you see if I bring it up, it's a lot more red. Bring the end down, and it does this. There's a lot more explanation to this, but like, because this tutorial is for beginners, I'm not going to go super in depth. But the thing with this is just playing around with it and getting something you like. I already get like a cool different effect. So maybe you wanted to post multiple versions of your artwork, you can play around with this. But for me personally, when I do use this, I don't go too crazy. I actually will make it very subtle. Whereas like maybe we're on gamma and I just drag this down, bring this up a bit. Like, I just do whatever looks nice. I don't really have a specific method for this one. Okay, next is your gradient map. Here you'll get a bunch of preset gradients. Some of these are I've created myself, and then some are just added, where it just does the same thing we were doing before, except there's just previous gradients. We can create a new one by clicking that plus sign and setting colors. So I'm gonna click that black box, change it to like a red. Click the white box, maybe change it to yellow. And then to create a new box, we're just gonna tap an empty space and then tap it, and maybe let's change it to like, I don't know. Yeah, let's change it to like a greenish. Let's create a new one and change it to like blue. See, that just looks ridiculous. But yeah, this is how you would play with your colors and stuff like that, using a gradient map or creating a new one. And if you wanted to delete a box, you would press and hold on the box and it'll show this option to delete. And then I almost forgot to show you, if you want to change your gradient name, you just got to tap here where it says gradient, and then you could type it in. Next, we'll have Gaussian blur, motion blur, and perspective blur. So this is just creating a blur effect. And I often do this for backgrounds, maybe if you want to bring more focus to your subject. So since we're on the face, you would click Gaussian blur and then tap and drag, and you see that it just blurs what you have here. Like if you go all the way, it's gone. If you just go subtly, it just looks like it's blurry. And then if you click this arrow right here, you get an option to affect the whole layer or use it as a pencil. So let's say I click pencil. It's gonna choose whatever brush you have selected. So click your brush. I have the hard brush chosen, and I'm just gonna paint over selected areas. So let's say I wanted everything to be blurry except the eyes, right? I would paint, let's drag it down. You see it's at 60%. Let's drag it down to like 14, okay? and then I would paint over, and you see that now it's just blurring what I'm painting on. And now I'm able to drag and make it crazy or whatever, or not at all. And you have that same option for motion blur as well. Motion blur, you're just dragging in the direction you want it to blur. So if I drag up, it's blurring up diagonally to the side. And sometimes I like to do a cool effect with this. Now, the difference with perspective blur is that you're getting this anchor point and you're dragging to make it blur to the perspective of that anchor point. So let's say it's over here, and then if you drag, the closer it is to this point, the more focused it is. So if I put this right here, you see that it's focused where the point is, and then everything farther away is blurred. Or if I have it all the way over here, or maybe in the center, that's just basically how this one works. And then obviously you can do the same thing where you can affect it with a brush or the whole layer. And you get the option at the bottom to do directional. This is just a different effect where you get to rotate the anchor points. I often tend to use blur with backgrounds. So let's say we created a new layer and we had just a bunch of things going on in the background. Like let's say we had a red sky and then a city, like evil. What I would do is go to adjustments up here, go to gradient blur, and then blur it. And now you see we have this blurry background, and it just brings more focus to our portrait, our subject. Now going back to our face, let's continue. Adjustments, we have noise. These are just different things, creates a grainy effect that you can adjust with. I'm not gonna get too into that. Sharpen, sharpens it. Bloom, gives it a glowing effect. Like an automatic glowing effect. You might put a little bit of that on there. Glitch, makes it glitchy. This is actually really fun to use. I tend to do this. I do it just a little bit or something, I don't know. Then wave, there's just different, a lot of different things you can do. Chromatic aberration, same thing. The anchor point, where you can do the aberration. I'll probably do a little bit like this. Now let's go back, and this is the main one I wanted to focus on, is our Liquify tool. So the Liquify tool is what I'll often use to fix my portrait. Like maybe I see how this mouth looks a little crooked, right? So I wanted to fix that without having to just redraw it. I would go to the Liquify tool, which we're on. We have these different options. We have push, twirl, twirl left, etc., etc. The main ones that I use are push, pinch, and expand. And I'll explain why. So push, we're gonna adjust our brush size here. You have the pressure as well, you can adjust the distortion, momentum. Maybe you can just set it to what I have here if you want, it just helps, but you can play around with that. So we're on push, I'm on this size. And since we're on the layer of our portrait, I can now move this around. And you see how I'm fixing the mouth? Like maybe I just want this to be a little smaller. Push the eye in a little bit more. Things like this. This is how people adjust their drawing as one unit. And you won't really be able to do this if your layers are separated. Like if you were selecting a group like what we did, then you can do it. But if these were all separate layers, I would only be affecting the highlights if I was only on the highlight layer. Now, same with pinch. You could go ahead and I can make this tiny. Look, face is tiny now. Undo that. Twirl right is the same thing. Okay, so you can get real crazy with this. And then if you did this right, and instead of undoing it, you wanted just to twirl it but not be too crazy, you would click adjust, which is one option over here, and by dragging this, you can take it back to maybe you just want it right here, maybe just that point. See? So there's a lot of things you can play with here. Now your last little effect is going to be the clone feature, which here it gives you this circle. So let's say I wanted to clone just this part of the nose. Now using my brush, what it does is I'm gonna paint in the empty area. Once I paint, you see it's literally cloning the face. I never use this, like I've never used it before. I just know what it does. I've never actually used it in my pieces because I just rather duplicate it. So let's undo that. Now that we've basically covered all these different, tools and stuff like that, just the basics of it, we're going to get into the actions at the top left. So here you get all these different options. Inserting photos is just going to access your library. We have the text tool. Let's do that one first. So click add text. You'll get this. Let's say you want to put be happy. And then we're going to go ahead and double tap our text to select the full thing. And you'll see this little menu pop up, which just gives us quick access to the buttons we'll need, which we'll get to in a second. But let's click the color wheel at the top right of our screen and change the color of our font. And then to change our font, we're going to again double tap text. And you can adjust the selection if you move these two little points. And then to change our font, you want to click up here. And you'll get all these different fonts here, which, yeah, you can kind of just play with. I'll leave it maybe just something like this. Next to your fonts, you'll have style, and it just gives you different versions of that font. So right now we're on ANA 01 for this here, and we're just at regular style. But you see, if I just change style, these fonts just come with something different. Maybe let's do that. And as for these design settings, you can adjust your size just by dragging across the bars here. Kerning is another setting where you can make it more spread out. Also note that, see how you have this blue highlighted box? That basically is your text box for your text. If you want to adjust the size of that, you'll click where that blue dot is on the right. We'll just pull on either side. And then leading brings the gap between the different levels closer. Baseline kind of does the same thing, but in a different way. And then opacity, of course, just makes your text more transparent. And then over here on the right, attributes, this is the same type of thing you'll see when you're typing on computers. You can align the text. So if I click this, it's to the left side of the text box, center, right side, full, explanatory. And then we have the underline here, as well as this outline look to the text. And next to that, we have vertical. So here, kind of looks strange for how I have this set up. But let's say I adjusted the size. You'll see that now this is vertical. Another thing you should note is that when you go to your layers, you'll see a layer for the text that you made. And you cannot draw on this because it's simply just for text. So if I go to my brush and I try to draw on it, it won't let me, and this will pop up. So you can either cancel that, rasterize, or edit text. Now rasterizing it, what this does is it flattens it into its own layer now. So now this, as you can see on the right, is no longer a layer that's for text, and it's now its own drawing layer that I'll be able to now draw on, erase, even use the Liquify tool, etc. And this top menu at the left is just going to take us back to our keyboard. Next to it, the pair of scissors is for cutting, and then next to that are copy and paste buttons per usual. And then right here where it says import font is what you would click if you wanted to import from different websites online. Going back to actions, we have copy canvas, which is one, whereas let's say you wanted to copy your whole canvas, copy it, and then click paste. And now in our layers, we literally have the whole thing as just one layer. Like if you wanted to adjust different layer modes on this, you can. Next one is your canvas. Here's where you can crop and resize your canvas, which we're happy with our size right now. We're just going to leave it, but there's that option where you would just drag your edges here to change it. But just know, once you crop it, the only thing you can do is click the undo button. Like if I were to crop this, everything else is gone. It's gone. Okay, so just be careful with what you do with that. And then also, if you want to be more precise with how you crop and resize your canvas, at the top right you can click settings, and then you'll get this little menu here where you can click the number and change it. And let's say I change this to 4,000 pixels instead, and then click done. As you can see, it just expanded on the right side, which basically changes the original shape. So if we undo that and then go back to the settings in here and click on that chain button, now what you're doing is you're chaining the length and the width together. So if I go ahead and change this to, I guess, 5,000 now, it's still that same rectangle, just at a larger size. Snapping, you turn that on and then grab the corners, basically snaps it to specific things in your drawing. So if you had some text, it would snap to the text. And lastly here, your rotation just, rotates. Next one we have here is animation assist, and that's for animating. So I'm not even gonna get into that. That will be for a whole nother video, so let's just skip over that for now. Under that, we have page assist, which is a cool one, so let's turn that on. And you'll see that this little menu at the bottom pops up and it shows new page. Go ahead and click new page. It's basically treating your layers as pages. So we could look at this one as page 1, and then this is page 2, which is honestly really great for making little comics. You can go ahead and draw on your page. Let's say that's my character, and then I wanted a background. You see, when I add a layer, it makes another page, but what you'll need to do is swipe right on both those layers, create a group, and now this one group is considered its own page. This is how you would use page assist while still having different layers involved in each page. Next we have drawing guide. Let's just turn off all these things we did, okay? And we're gonna create a new layer. So my brush to black. Okay, now, and then go back to actions, turn on your drawing guide, and you'll get a grid like this. We're gonna edit the drawing guide, and now you get these different options. You can do isometric, and then we have perspective, which is cool. If you were doing like some type of layout drawing, like you were drawing an interior setting of a room, you could use the perspective tool and you can set your vanishing point. So if I go ahead and tap off screen, you see it sets one vanishing point, and then I can tap somewhere else and it sets another vanishing point. You can change the colors of your lines by dragging this at the top. See that now it's red. I'm gonna get the one on the right and I'm gonna change this one to orange, or let's just leave it as blue. And also down here you can adjust the opacity or the thickness of those lines. So we're gonna click done, okay? And you have something like this. Now this is kind of a cheat code, but we're gonna go on this new layer we have, tap it, and turn on the drawing assist. Now what this will do is whatever brush you have, it's gonna be stuck to these lines. So if I wanted to do a room, right? Now if I just draw, it's automatically going to the vanishing point, which is kind of just an easy way to do it. And you automatically can make a room or like a box of any sort. This is really helpful for layout drawing. Next, let's turn that off. Create a new layer. I'm going to show you how to use the symmetry tool. So going back to actions, edit the drawing guide, and we're going to go to symmetry this time. Now what this does is it puts this line in the center, which you can move around, but we're going to leave it in the center for now, and click done. And now making sure that it says assisted. See how on the layer it says assisted? That means that drawing assist is on. We tap it. If I were to tap it and turn it off, now it's not going to do anything. But since we tap it and it says assisted, anything we draw on one side is going to pop up on the other side. It's pretty cool. Like if you want to do a perfect portrait, to our drawing guide, edit drawing guide. It's on symmetry, but this time click options. And you can get even more. So we can do horizontal, where now everything on the bottom will be at the top. Or we can do quadrant, will now be 4, or radial. So let's just do radial so you can really see. Click done. Make sure it says assisted on our layer. And see how we get this. You can do some like cool patterns. Okay, moving on from the drawing guide, we have reference. I really like this. Like, it took them a while to add this, but we're gonna click reference here. To move this menu, I'm just grabbing this little gray bar at the top and dragging it to where I want it to be. And then to resize the menu, I'm either getting the bottom left or bottom right and just dragging it inward. And we can see our drawing at full screen no matter how much we zoom in, which is really good for portraits when you're painting in details. Or what we can do is image, where you would click import and import an image. So like maybe you're drawing somebody and you need to see it. Here now in this tab, you get to see and draw their face rather than, you know, having to have it somewhere else, like on your phone or your computer, things like that. And then face is a feature only some iPads have, where you can do like a cool face painting effect. But we're not going to get into that. Next, we have flip horizontal and flip vertically, which is really helpful when you're doing portraits and you want to see the issues, which I use a lot, but obviously we use the symmetry tool, so this doesn't matter right now, but really utilize flipping horizontally because it helps. We have our share button, where you can share it to your phone or just your iPad to export it as PSD, JPEG, etc. Simply, if you're posting, like you want a picture, you're gonna click share and you're ideally gonna click PNG or JPEG. And make sure you're at the top section here, this shared image section. This bottom section where it says share layers is actually to export individual layers. So let's say you had 4 layers and you clicked export PNG files. It's gonna have 4 PNGs, and PNG 1 is gonna be the first layer, second one is gonna be the second layer, and so on. And then please back up your artwork, because let's say you ever want to revisit something or for some reason your iPad crashes, you're going to want to have a backup. So click Procreate right there at the top and then export it to maybe a hard drive, iCloud, computer, just something so you can be safe. Next, we have video, which I love this feature in Procreate. This gives us the time lapse of what we just did. So make sure that time-lapse recording is checked on like I have it. And if I click time-lapse replay, it basically just shows me everything I did throughout this video. And then you just drag your finger anywhere across the screen to speed through or rewind. And on video, we can export. So if you were to click export, you can either get the full length or the 30 seconds. Right now, my 30 seconds is not highlighted, I believe, just because this wasn't long enough. Like, I guess maybe I was just drawing too quickly, but usually this will be an option here. So if you wanted just a quick time lapse that people will be posting on social media, 30 seconds is what I would suggest. That's what I often do. Moving on, we have our preferences. We can get our light interface, which I do not like. I'm not trying to kill my eyes. And then this right hand interface just moves your little menu here for your brush size to the right side of your screen instead. Brush cursor, this is a good one that I would suggest putting on. This is like that circle that you see. So let me make my brush big. See how you see that circle that shows where I'm drawing? That's very helpful. You can see the difference when I don't have it on. It's just kind of, you just draw. It's, you know, just personal preference. I'm gonna turn that back on. Don't worry about everything else. Any other settings you see on mine, you can just match it on yours. If you want to get out of your canvas, you would just click gallery at the top left and it takes you back to everything you've created. Before I forget, like I promised in the beginning, how to organize your different canvases. We're gonna go ahead and click that select button at the top right, and then you'll get these different options. And let's say you have a bunch of, I don't know, animal drawings you want to separate from portraits, and then maybe you have some landscape drawings. Well, you would use this stack. So first is tap these just 3 blank ones that I have here, and you see it checks it off. And then I'm going to click stack, and then that's automatically going to put it into a group right there. So X that out and then go in and you see it's separated. And then you can also rename this by going back, and then we're going to click where it says stack there. And let's say I wanted to name this portraits. There you go. And then once you're in here, you can move them around by just holding and dragging to where you want it to be. And let's say you didn't want it in this stack anymore, you would click the arrow at the top left and drag it out and just place it. Then you can bring it back in just by hovering over the stack and dropping it right back in. And also you could do this if you wanted to just preview all these at once. You could go ahead and click that, click preview, and now obviously they're all blank, but you would have just a preview of all your different artworks. You could look at them like that. And to get out of this, you would just pinch with 2 fingers on the screen. And then next we have share for sharing multiple, files. Be careful with doing that, because depending on your model and how much storage you have on your, iPad, this could actually crash your stuff. So I don't know. Be careful with that. Maybe just share one at a time, unless you absolutely have to. Then duplicate and delete. Self-explanatory, those two. And then yeah, I'm pretty sure I covered everything for a beginner at least. There's more I can get into, which I'll be sure to do another video, like depending on your guys' response. If you want something a little more advanced, I'll be sure to do that. But I hope this helped. If you have any questions, be sure to leave them down in the comments. And yeah, I'll see you guys in the next video. Peace out.